3, 2.
Good evening, everybody. This is Jeff Colson from Junior Hockey Advisor. I hope you're having a great night. I hope you had a great weekend. And we're here to talk a little hockey, a little talk about the transition process. Got a lot of things I want to talk about tonight, especially something I launched today that I think many of you will find very helpful. But once again, I'm Jeff Colson. This is Junior Hockey Advisor. I've been doing this for over 30 years. We've got a lot of new audience. I'm glad to see on a Monday night that we've got an audience already building. It's good to see. But I'm a master certified coach. I've been working at the NCAA level as a coach, owner, GM, head coach, assistant coach for years at the EGHL level, the NCDC level, the USPHL level, the Empire level, many different levels of junior hockey. I currently work in the North American Hockey League as a director of player development. And this is what I do. And I try to use my information, my experience, my background to kind of help with the transition process with people trying to move from youth to junior, from junior to college. And that could be it also includes high school to juniors, prep to juniors. So we try to look at all the different transition points and try to make sense of this and try to make sense to the whole process. So that's what we're here to do. We try to answer your questions. So, please jump on, tell us where you're watching from. If you've got questions, please answer the questions. I have not had my coffee yet, so I'm going to be drinking coffee during this, and I hope that doesn't bother you. I know it's not very professional, but it's got to be done because it's been a long day working on all this stuff. So once again, throw your comments on. Tell us where you're watching from. Kelly, thank you so much for coming up from Seattle. Good to see you. Your first one up on the board today. So, like I said, I did something today that I think, if you participate in the discussion group, you won't see much mention of it there. And the reason why you won't see it is because I don't allow people to solicit on the discussion group. So I don't solicit on the discussion group. However, if you go over to the Facebook page, not the group, the junior hockey page, you can find the information of what I launched today. And you can also go to our YouTube channel, Junior Hockey Advisor YouTube channel, and there's a short video on there too. So what I do? Why am I talking about this? What I did today was I took one of our classes off of our Teachable platform. We do seminars and webinars on Teachable from anything from somebody who wants to become an industry professional. They want to work in the hockey industry and they want to get launched. They want to get started. We have webinars to help them transition in and get to know all the nuts and bolts from, the ownership side, the marketing side, the financial side, and put together a picture. We do those types of videos. We do, information about how to market yourself as a player. We do all kinds of webinar things, and they're easy webinars. If you haven't been there yet before, all you have to do is go to our website, Junior Hockey Advisor. You can click on to some of our current webinars, but you don't have to do it on one specific topic because I just opened the door and made this easier. So we've got a platform to do webinars on advisors, and I've had a webinar out there for a little over a year on advisors, working with advisors. So what I did was the price tag on that was over $120. And it's been a very popular one for us. And I went, you know what? It's been there long enough. Let's get it to where all the people are at. We've got 6,000 people on our discussion group. We've got 5,000 people on this group, and we've got another 3,000 over here. And their friends and followers are another 8,000. Either are friends or followers of me. So we're going to combine all that. We're going to launch it out $9.99. So I slashed the price down so that if anybody, I don't plug things very often. Tonight I'm plugging that. Like it or not, you got a shameless plug once in a while. But if you're looking to put the picture together on the advisor process, this is a great place to start. It's a good platform. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to add modules to it or improve modules as more information comes up. I just realized today that I've added information on the advisor process, on how to find advisors. that I haven't updated in the chapter in there, I'll update the chapter on the webinar too to make sure that that's good. So, hey, for the cup of Starbucks and a little croissant, you can get the ABC, the who, what, when, and where on family advisors. It is the most demanded topic, kind of because of the name of what we do. Since we're called Junior Hockey Advisor, you would expect a lot of people to ask questions about, how do I hire an advisor? Who do I hire? When do I hire? Why do I hire? Now, with that said, jump on, grab it, take advantage of it. I don't believe we're going to raise the price back up. I think that's the price point we're just going to stay at from now on. That webinar has served me well. Now I want it to serve you well. So jump on and take advantage of it. And remember, you are not going to see that show up on the discussion group. So you have to go over to the Junior Hockey Advisor page, or you have to go to YouTube or our website. Those three places you can find it. And I hope you enjoy it. Please, if you've already watched it or you've already been part of that webinar, throw your comments up. Let other people know. Even if you see something that needs to be done in improvements, let me know. I'll try to make the improvements to it to get you the information you need and move forward there. So that's my plug. That's all I got. Now I'll talk about the process. You got questions on that? I'll talk about it. I did not come in with an agenda tonight. Most of you know the team that I work for. We made it to the Final Eight, which is the divisional championship. We played against a very strong New Mexico team, and it was an incredible series. We were up 2-0, and then they came back. New Mexico came back and won the last three. One in overtime, one is a 1-0 game, and the other game was a 1-goal game until the last minute of the game too. Incredible series. Hats off to New Mexico. They did an extremely good job. They're well represented. It's a good ownership group there. Stan Hubbard is the owner, does a great job. The coach is the coach of the year this year. Clearly, he deserves that title. It was the coach of the year going up against the general manager of the year. And hats off to New Mexico. They did a great job. So my world kind of changed when we were up 2-0. I was planning on being in Blaine, Minnesota for the next week for the championships. And then I was also going to do some scouting and recruiting for U18s. That's up in the air. I'm not sure. Kind of taking a breath right now and deciding if that's what I want to do this week, or if I'm just going to breathe a little bit and step back from the road show and collecting players at this time, or looking to collect players at this time. So we'll see as the week goes on where that goes. But as it stands right now, I think I'm going to sleep in for a few days, just like the rest of the coaching staff and ownership at Lone Star, just trying to lick our wounds a little bit. But congratulations, New Mexico. They did a great job. It'll be a great Final Four. Now that we're out and New Mexico's in, I'm a huge New Mexico fan. I want to see them go and represent well, and hopefully they do. So, okay, let's talk a little bit about some of the comments that are already coming in. We've got comments coming in, and we've got people checking in. So, Potsdam, don't see the name, but thank you so much. See, the way it shows up to me is it shows up like that. So I don't see who actually is in Potsdam. It depends on, once again, I think I've told you guys this before, it depends on which platform you're watching on. Some platforms only shows up as Facebook. Others show up with your actual name or your tag. So Kathy coming in from Pearl River, New York. If I haven't asked you, Kathy, tell me where the heck Pearl River is. I'd love to know. Being that I live in Western New York, I'm not familiar with that area. Okay, so somebody wants to know a little bit about the USPHL versus the NA3. We've done that before. I'll do that tonight too. Let me start jotting down a couple notes because I want to get through your comments and see what you want first, and then we'll get back and answer some questions. NA3 v USPHL. And one of our, on our Facebook discussion page, one of our, I think they call them experts, is Jeff Nygaard. And Jeff does some great stats. If you scroll through, maybe do some searching on our discussion group for former topics, he throws some fantastic stats up on this. So, I'd start there too, besides whatever we talk about tonight, because it does a good job. St. Catharines, Ontario, good to see you on. Let's see. Jeff Cook in South Carolina. Good to see you. Matt's coming in from New Mexico. Okay, that's a nice comment. Hello from New Mexico. Great job by the Brahmas. That Nemo kid is a beast. He is. He's a great player. Go Ice Wolves. Absolutely go Ice Wolves. They deserve the run they've got going on. So, okay, here's one. And this is something we just talked about. I'll jump into this question right off the bat and help here. The question comes on anything for coaches that want to move up. Go to our website, Junior Hockey Advisor. If you go on the website, you'll see a program for industry professionals. And you'll also see, if you go to our Junior Hockey Advisor page, some of the students that have gone through that are already working in Tier 3, Tier 2 junior hockey. They moved up into some high-level scouting roles and started pretty much from scratch. And these are people in the last year and a half that have gone through the program. So, yeah, it's extensive. It's going to take you some time to get through, but we do have a program for coaches and recruiters, scouts, coaches, people that want to work as an assistant GM or GM in the junior world that are kind of coming in clueless. I was just talking to a young scout with a really good resume over the weekend, and he is a GM for a Tier 3 team, never involved with being a GM before, didn't know half of all the stuff that had to be done. That would be perfect for somebody like that that's literally just getting into it. Maybe you've been involved with hockey a long time as a coach, but as you move into other aspects of the game, we do have programs for you on that. So, yeah. Amherstburg, Ontario is on. Great to see you on. If you don't know where that is, get on the bridge where Eminem sang his song for the video and the beginning scenes of 8 Mile. Get on the bridge. Hang a hard right when you get to Windsor. You'll get right over to Amherstburg. So, very good. Oh, Kelly, you did go through that program. So I forgot about that. I would have mentioned that earlier. Kelly mentions that the webinar was informative. That's good. And I see your kids are going to be in Blaine. Kelly, good to see you. Hastings, Minnesota is on. Good to see you there. Detroit's on, of course, Hockey Town. Sheboygan, Wisconsin is on. And once again, second best Sheboygan. I'm going to actually be up in close. I'm going to be up in northern Michigan next weekend. My nephew, who was a Honey Baked Little Caesars player, actually, you may remember I've mentioned this before. He was the number 1 overall draft pick in the USHL draft a few years ago. Ferris State grad, getting married. So there's going to be a lot of hockey people up in northern Michigan, not this weekend, but the weekend after. And I'll be one of them. So looking forward to that. It'll be a lot of fun. So, okay. Here's a good question. How do you handle multiple final camp invites for the NAHL? Do you know what is a real opportunity to make a team? This is a phenomenal question, and I'll tell you, it's a really good question. So final camp is really main camp, and main camps are mid-July. What happens is you get these pre-camps, identifying camps, rookie camps. Some people call them pre-draft camps, and they're usually starting this next weekend, and they go, well, probably not the weekend of Blaine, but the weekend after, and they start rolling. We actually run a pre-draft camp in Chicago. I'll be there the weekend after next. So, yeah, I'm on the road between weddings, and if Blaine was there, I don't think I would have been home for like 3 weeks. So the question is, what do you do? So you either come out of a pre-draft or you get a direct invite to a main camp. How do you know the difference between one main camp and another? Well, specifically the question was to the NAHL, but I think this can be answered generically. Then we can talk about the NAHL a little bit too. So there is a way that you can back into that answer, but you're never really going to have a full, complete picture. You can ask questions. Whoever invited you, you can call up the assistant coach, you can call the scout, the recruiter, the head coach, the GM, whoever you're dealing with or whoever you have access to. Of course, you can ask the question, hey, what are you bringing back? What does it look like? What do you already have lined up? Because if you're being invited, you get invited in numerous ways. 4 or 5 categories, depending on how you split it up. If you're a returning player, you most likely are going to get invited to your main camp. And remember, people talk about money grab situations. Main camp, players get charged, tenders get charged, draft picks get charged, invitees get charged. Everybody's paying for main camp. Main camp isn't a give me. Even at the USHL level, it's not a give me. So you can get invited into the camp as a returning player. You can get invited into the camp as a draft pick, as a tender. A lot of times the affiliate players from the season before that, that's the U18 players that got a chance to come up and play a couple games. They can get invited in as preferred invites or a free agent invite, whatever you want to call them. And then you've got your free agent invites. Now, free agent invites are a couple different categories. They can be rookie invites, meaning you're coming out of prep, you're coming out of high school, you're coming out of midget hockey, or you can be a junior player from another league. For example, the CGHL, the NCDC, NA3. You can come from all those different areas. So once you're in there, now this is the big misconception. Once you're into that camp, all bets are off on tenders, draft picks, and veterans. You can be a veteran player that doesn't shine well and gets cut out of main camp, doesn't make the 35 roster to go into the fall. Because remember, there's a protected list over the summer. You go into camp, and some teams invite up to, let's say you invite 10 teams worth of players with 20 players apiece. That's 200 players. Mostly it's going to be around 120 to 150 players. You're not going to see 200, but there are some that do it. Now, with that said, of all those players, you're just trying to make it out of main camp. Your job at main camp is to get on that 35. Then in the fall, you're going to see another cut that'll go down to 23. Now, some of those cuts are intentional, meaning they're going to get sent back to the NA3 team because maybe they brought up 2 or 3 guys from the NA team to try to make the roster. They go back down to NA3. Some were already locked into a U18 team, but made the final 35 and are going to try to make the roster for the fall. They don't. They go back to the U18 team, so they have landing spots. Others don't have landing spots, so there's a contingency there. So the question specifically, again, was how do you handle multiple final camps? Well, you're right on asking how do you know where their real opportunity is and where there isn't. When my son was drafted in the USHL, he got a fairly good draft number. He went 100 and something overall, which is decent. And on his team, it looked like he had a really good, draft number. I think he was in the 7th round, and it looked really good for him before you started doing the homework. And you realize that they had a ton of returners, and there wasn't really any spots they were looking to fill. I think they filled 1 spot, and he was the 2nd or 3rd defenseman that they drafted that year. And we knew going into camp that, our luck was we got drafted by a really good team, but with a lot of returners. So he immediately had to start looking to, as soon as he got cut, to make sure that he was going to another camp. And we made it very clear, hey, look, if you don't think we're going to be on the fall roster on the final 23, just let us know now. We'd rather be released to go to another USHL camp. So there is a lot of jockeying that has to be done and a lot of homework you can do. But some of you don't have control of it. And when I say that, if you're drafted or you're tendered, you really don't have control of it until you get released. In other words, after main camp, having the ability to not go to the fall camp with that team. In other words, why would I say that? Well, if you're number 35, they whittle that 120 players down to 35. They post the 35. You go in for your exit interview, and they say, hey, look, you're the 33rd player, you're the 34th player, you're the 35th player. We want you to really work hard, and here's what you need to work on before the fall. Well, if I know I'm 35 and they're going to cut down to 25 or 23, depending on which league we're in, man, oh man, I might want to start thinking about what my other options are. Is it better to go to another NAHL camp then and go in as a free agent, or is it better to stick with that team as a player in the top 35? Good question. I can't answer that, but yes, you can find out a little bit about the real opportunities. You can't find out the full picture because most coaches aren't going to disclose everything to a family just because of the time constraints, and they're going to keep some of their cards close to their vest. They don't want to let everybody know their business across the board on what they're building because there's still there's trades to be made, there's player movements to be made, there's players that they're still working with, and is it fair to give you a full assessment but not give everybody a full assessment? And coaches and general managers are, they're going to be limited on what information they give you. But most coaches will tell you, hey, look, we're returning 2 defensemen. So we know we're gonna need a minimum of 6 defensemen coming in. You can look at what they draft and assess yourself against the draft list. And you might be able to, through social media, about the only way you can get a good idea on tenders is go back to the team's Twitter or go through their social media page and look and see when they announce their tenders. Most teams announce tenders, but they don't give you a full list. Some do. Some will give you a full list of every tender. Most just announce their tenders one by one as they come out. I know I've rambled on that subject quite a bit. Did that help you at all, Keith? Give me a comment back and let me know if that's any good there. Kathy, thanks for letting me know. 45 minutes north of Manhattan across the Tappan Zee Bridge from Westchester. Okay, now I got an idea where it is. Okay, Mass is on with Paul. Good to see Tampa's on. Orange County, California is on. And here's a good question. How will a USHL main camp compared to a NAHL camp? What should players expect if they haven't been to a USHL camp before? Does the experience differ much? Yeah, there is differences between the two. A USHL camp, for the most part, now this last year was the first year I didn't attend a lot of USHL camps. This whole pandemic has kind of changed the dynamics of how you go about what I do. But I can tell you, in most cases, you're going to see a lot more 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds at a USHL camp versus a NAHL camp. A NAHL camp might have some young players there, but usually they're there for a reason. In other words, let's say, and I'm just making this up. Let's say I'm one of the teams on the East Coast. I've got a couple U18 programs in my neighborhood. Maybe there's even a Tier 1 program in my building. I'm going to make sure that I invite 3 or 4 or 5 of their U18 players, maybe even a couple of their U16 players to go through the main camp experience. Okay, you go to a USHL camp, you could see 3, 4, 5 or more 16 to 18-year-olds, 16 to 17-year-olds skating, maybe even 15-year-olds skating on each team. I remember Muskegon for probably 3 or 4 years in a row. It looked more like a U16 camp than it did a USHL camp. But that's just the way it is. It's a younger experience. Most camps, the construct is about the same. From management to management, it changes team to team, but the construct's going to be the same. You're going to get 6, 8, 10 teams in. They're going to play a round robin. You're going to have some meetings with the staff. You might have parent meetings where they, information meetings. You'll get an idea of how the team works, how the coaching staff looks at things, and you might get feedback. Now, some of the better programs, the industry gold standard teams do some pretty cool things. For example, in Dubuque, if you're there, there's a good chance you're going to get some feedback so you can look at video instantly after your game of all your shifts and your stats. They break it down pretty darn quickly, and they give that information back so you can actually get feedback as you're going through. And you can expect an exit interview in most cases that's pretty genuine. Not always, depending on how much staff there. I've been to main camps that at the USHL level that were horrible, and I've been to NAHL main camps that have been unbelievably professional. Before there was a management change in Madison. Madison probably had the worst main camp for a few years in a row, up to a year or two ago, as possible. Unmanaged, just basically it looked like a scrimmage for players that were just trying to get some skates in for the summer. No communication, no feedback, just one of those things, and very few other junior programs from other leagues and very few college coaches there. You get the industry standard, the leaders. You're always going to see college coaches there. You're going to get other junior programs watching in the stands and assessing players too, because if there's cuts, there's other junior programs that want to be involved. So there's usually some collaboration there. So the experience, not much difference. I would say that in my experience, I see the USHL's main camps as being younger for the most part, year after year. That might change. Right now, though, the NAHL is still the oldest league of all the junior leagues. I don't expect that to change much. So, and remember, part of that reason is because you've got all the CJHL players, the Canadian Junior Hockey League players, and the BCHL. So you got the BCHL, AJ, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and then you got the Ontario leagues. You got the OJHL, the SIJHL, Northern Ontario Junior Hockey League, Quebec League, the CCHL. All those leagues have Americans and some Canadians that want to play in the NAHL. The NAHL will take free agents that are in their last year. The USHL won't take a last year CCHL guy or an AJ guy for the most part. They want a guy that's younger. They're going for a little bit more youth. They're restricted on the USHL is restricted on the bottom on how many young players that they're mandated to have, and then they're restricted on the top on how many old players they can have, last year players. So first year juniors and last year juniors are capped in the USHL, whereas the NAHL doesn't have that restriction on their top players. So they could have a whole roster of last year players if they wanted to do that. So you're going to see an older main camp for the most part in the North American Hockey League. RJ from Minnesota is on. Good to see you. Charles on from Massapequa, New York. Just flew the airplane over that the other day. Keith says, after that long discussion I had on that, I hope it helped. He goes, that helps. We're looking at open spots with teams, and we'll watch how the draft plays out. It's just hard to read the tea leaves. It absolutely is hard to read the tea leaves. I'm trying to build a draft list, and it's hard to read the tea leaves. We're doing the same thing on both ends because we're looking for those players that are still out there. We're looking to, it's nice now that the USHL draft is out of the way, because now the USHL is drafted, you know where the top line is on those players that were drafted. Now you can work your magic from there down. Remember, we're trying to recruit, get to know players before the USHL has made their picks. So there's usually overlap on players. So that's out of the way for us. Now we're just honing in on the last bits before we go into our draft, which is in mid-June. So good, Keith. I'm glad, and hopefully that works out. Okay, here's a good one. What does a letter of intent from a Canadian Junior A team mean for a player? A letter of intent for a player means pretty much that you're committing. A letter of intent is not much different than the tender process in the United States. Letter of intent says you're signing on to play with a Canadian Junior A team. They're committing to you. You're committing to them. You used to hear the phrase card. Teams used to use the word card, and technically the card system is still in play in most of the different leagues. But really they don't use there's no physical cards anymore like they used to have. Teams used to have these cards for each player, and they were dealt out so many cards they could have. That physically doesn't happen anymore, but it's no real different than Charles. It's really not different than the tender process. Now I can do a whole show later. I'm not going to go into it tonight because I was just not boned up on it on how many players in the construct of the CJHL roster and how it differs, an AJHL roster and how it differs from a NAHL or a USHL roster. Let's save that one for a different night, but I will break that down for you. And I got some videos out there. I think there's a video on YouTube for the AJHL that describes that and goes into that process for you. So hopefully that helps. Let's see. From a player standpoint, do you think it's worth going to a main camp for experience for a 16-year-old if you're truly not ready for junior hockey and a couple years away? My answer to that one's pretty easy. First of all, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that question. The answer is yes. When my son played for the Oakland Junior Grizzlies as a 15-year-old turning 16, I think half his team went to the USHL camps, maybe even more. Maybe 3/4 of the team went to USHL camps out of the Detroit area. Now, remember, Detroit's central. They can get to back then it was the Indy camp, the Muskegon. You had Chicago. There's a lot of camps that were fairly close. So you saw, a lot of the Detroit area U16 players going to those camps. None of them had a shot at making the roster that year. but they were playing at a high level of Tier 1, and a large portion of them ended up being draft picks over the next couple of years, and it absolutely made a difference because you go into that first one, you're wide-eyed, you're intimidated by the guys with the half shields. Am I going to get in a fight? What's going to happen? These guys are so big, they're so fast, and then by the end of the week, you're feeling pretty good about yourself. The next year you come in, you got a little bit of you're walking a little taller, chest out a little bit more, and you kind of understand the game a little more, and you're relaxed a lot more when it starts getting closer to making a difference in your hockey. So absolutely, I would highly recommend if you got an opportunity to go to, even at the lower levels, if you're not getting invited to a USHL or a NAHL, if you get a chance to go to main camps, even at the NA3 level, the EHL level, the USPHL level, I would highly recommend going just for the experience because it's going to pay off in the long run. Remember, all roads, prep, high school, and U16, U18, they all flow through juniors. So if you're going to progress past juniors, you're going to go through juniors. As soon as you understand the process, the better. And another thing that's good about it is building that relationship. It's a small world. An assistant coach, let's say you end up going to the Chicago Steel main camp. That assistant coach could be in the NAHL the next year. He could be a college coach the year after that. And the more you're getting your name out there and being recognized by going to a main camp where he might have liked something he saw in you, the better for you. So yeah, I would absolutely jump on any opportunity that I could for that. Okay, so the question is, what's my thoughts on the Omaha Lancers? Hey, it's a USHL team. Okay, if you got an invite to a USHL camp, unless you've got two competing USHL camps, you got to decide between. You got to go. I mean, if you're getting invited to a main camp, you go. It doesn't matter if it's Omaha, Sioux City, Sioux Falls, Dubuque, Chicago, Muskegon. It doesn't matter. You go. That's my opinion on this. Is you only get there's only a certain amount of kids that are going to get invited to USHL camps, and get it out of your head about the phrase that just drives me nuts that I think is the most overused, the most tired, and the most unthought-provoking comment you can make is it's a money grab. Okay? Sticks are a money grab. You know how much those sticks cost to make and produce? A couple bucks. They sell them to you for $300. That's a money grab. You're actually getting ice time. You're actually building relationships. You're actually being able to compare yourself against your peers and better players than your peers at a main camp. You're actually you're building that relationship in the hockey world. You're moving yourself up into a different level. So jump on these opportunities. So Omaha Lancers, hey, look, it's a USHL team. You get a chance to go to a USHL when it doesn't matter who they are, you go. So hopefully that helps a little bit. I'm not going to break down who's better, Omaha or whoever you want to compare them against. They've corrected a couple of teams that needed to be corrected over the last couple of years, and overall the whole tide has risen on the USHL from the bottom end. You've always had your cream of the cream on the top, but the bottom end has gotten so much stronger, and Omaha's not one of those ones that were on the very bottom. Okay, so they're somewhere in the middle to the top, and if you get an opportunity, you got to go. So okay. Let's go to another one. We got an invite to a goalie camp with an opportunity to make the main camp based on performance. Is that common? That is absolutely common. You see a lot of programs that will do a 2 or 3 or 4 day goalie camp prior to the main camp. And then they'll have their veterans or their tenders or their draft picks already set, and then they'll pick from a large number of goalies that will to make it a smaller number that advances on to the main camp. Either way, it's a good experience. I would highly recommend it. And you get a chance to go. Once again, I can't say that that's good at every Tier 3 level because some of them, I've seen teams actually put 100 goalies, literally 100 goalies on the ice for a camp during the week prior to, or 3 or 4 days prior to a main camp, even at the tier 3 level. So I'd be careful at the lower ends, but if it's a USHL or a NAHL team, there's also a good chance that some of the other instructors are either college coaches or they're junior coaches too, and you can get some good relationships built there. So hopefully that helps. Let's see here. Is going to a USHL camp worth it if I'm attempting to play in the NAHL or the NCDC? I know I need another year before I play in the USHL, and I'm trying to save time and money. Well, I can't speak on the time and money factor. That's a personal issue. That's a personal concern, and I fully respect anybody that says, "Hey, look, we got to limit how much time we spend on hockey in the off season and how much money we spend." That's a very real situation for the majority of people in hockey. Budget. Okay, so I get that. Let's set that aside because I really can't address that. I don't know enough about your situation, nor should I. But USHL camps carry a different weight when you go to a camp and you're invited to a camp. It helps you. It helps you because then when you're talking to an NCDC team or you're talking to a NAHL team and they're recruiting you, or you're talking to the coach, you're talking to the GM, you can say, yeah, I'm going to be at the, whoever you want to say, you're going to be at the Phantoms camp that week in the middle of July. And that adds to your resume, okay? If you make it out of main camp and you're on that roster, it makes it on your resume. You might not write it on an actual resume, but in conversation, it becomes something to talk about. The other thing, too, is if you're looking for a NAHL relationship, there's a good chance that there's going to be numerous NAHL coaches, either directly or indirectly, involved with the main camp at the USHL level. For example, I'll get feedback as a NAHL player development guy. I'll get feedback from 6-8 GMs and coaches at the USHL level about the process, either directly through them. Our head coach will talk to them. Our assistant coach will talk to them. And the other thing, too, remember, is there is a ton of really good advisors working at that level that we're communicating with, too. So if you do really good in a USHL camp and still don't make the roster, that bubbles down to a lot of people, and it moves throughout the hockey world pretty quick on who did really good at a camp and who should be looked at and talked about. So if you're trying to save money, I get it. But if you're attempting to play in the NAHL or the NCDC, it can't hurt to get your name out there as a kid that did really well at a USHL camp. So here's a good comment. I hope that helps. Lisa, I hope that helps a lot on where you're going with that one. And I don't think Lisa was the one that's actually trying out for the USHL. And if you are, good for you. Okay, I hope you do really well, Lisa. I'm thinking Lisa's account was being hijacked by your son. Here's a good comment. Yeah, okay, we've all heard this. All roads lead to the beer leagues. Yeah, they do. It's beer leagues actually in my world. I came out of a fairly large college as a player, and I played a little bit for some money afterwards. And then I went into, pretty quickly I got a corporate job that was a pretty darn good salary with a company car, and, running around in the East Coast Hockey League for $300 or $400 a week, wasn't anywhere near as good as having a company car and a corporate job and a nice little stipend for being on the road. But I still got invited to play in the beer leagues, and to be honest with you, I don't know how guys do it. Beer leagues to me was one fight after another one, and if you're not fighting, you're trying to prevent yourself from getting in a fight. And it just, to me, it didn't make much sense. I'd rather play at a B level or a C level than to play at an A level beer league because, it's just my opinion. So anyway, let's see what else we've got here. Okay, Charles says, my son went to the USHL Combine, and then after the Combine and the draft, he received 8 invites to the USHL main camps. We can't go to all. How do we pick? Well, first of all, let's go back to the same thing we just heard from Lisa. Budget and time. If you want to go to as many as you want to go to them. There's going to be a handful of kids that will, get invited and go to 3, 4, 5 main camps at the USHL level. honestly, I think there's some overkill to that, but going to 2 or 3 would probably be worth it. And which ones do you go to? Well, which ones put the most time into sending out that email? Because a lot of times with USHL is just like any other league. 80% of the camps will fill off of what the team wants. That last 20% is what the team can get. I hope that makes sense. So if you're running 10 teams, you can probably fill 7 or 8 teams off of your tenders, your draft picks, your returning players, and invited players that you know about. And then you've got to still go out and fill the rest with players you're maybe not as familiar with, where you're actually inviting off a list. So when people say, "Oh yeah, I got a blanket email," yeah, you do get them. USHL, NAHL, BCHL, you'll still get where they're now they're filtered lists. What I mean by that is they're coming out of a camp. So you went to a NAHL combine, you went to a USHL combine, you fared well. They'll take the kids off that list and they'll invite them off of that because they've been vetted a little bit. You'll also see where a team will a blanketed area, a geographic area, and this is all done through backdoor software. RinkNet allows this. You can pick a geographic area, and you can say, I'm looking for left wings that are 6 foot tall that have had Tier 1 midget experience. It'll kick you out a list, and you can invite off of that list too. So there's different ways to get invited. But getting back to the question, if you got 8 USHL main camp invites, go to as much as you can. But the budget and the family time have got to be put into consideration there. And I hope you. Okay, I think I'm reading one question ahead here. So how do combines, USHL and NAHL compare to main camps? Total different beasts. Main camps are getting honed down. We'll do this weekend, 2 weekends from now in Chicago. We'll have over 100 kids, and I'm not sure what the number is. But let's say, I'm going to pick a number out. Let's say we have 125 kids come in. I would expect out of that 125, we'll have a legitimate 10 to 20 kids that we invite to main camp out of that. And the number could be lower, the number could be higher. But I know the list, fairly well. I don't know every kid on there. So some of these kids we want in the pre-draft camp or into the combine because we want to talk to them a little bit more. We want to meet their parents before main camp because when main camp gets there, the staff's racing around. They're doing so much. They might not get a chance to spend a little extra time. So sometimes that pre-draft camp is a better time to get to know the coaches or the general manager or the scouts because they might actually spend a little more time with you. Or they might pull you aside and talk to you if you're doing really well at a pre-draft. But the structure is fairly similar. Usually, though, you're not in the home rink. Usually, when you're at a pre-draft or a combine, you're at a different, you're at a location that's not part of the normal league rotation. In other words, you're not in somebody's home rink. For example, we're in Chicago. We're a team based out of Texas. We're in Chicago. It runs very similar. However, the talent level and the age level at a pre-draft is going to be younger, and the talent level is going to be the standard deviation of talent is going to be a wider spread from the middle. Okay, you're going to be that bell curve is really wide and not as high. You get to main camp, the talent level is higher, and it's a narrower spread on the talent. From the top to the bottom, it's much tighter at a main camp than it is at a pre-draft. So hopefully that helped a little bit. Let's see what we got here. My son is committed to a USPHL elite team and has been invited to a NAHL and an NCDCA camps in the summer. Is it a problem to go if he's already signed? Okay, so I can speak for the NAHL, and because NAHL is part of USA Hockey. If you're signed up with a USPHL elite team and you want to go skate with a NAHL team, perfectly okay from the NAHL's perspective and USA Hockey's perspective. Your contract might be restrictive, meaning if you did make that NAHL team, you might be fiscally responsible to the USPHL because they have a very restrictive contract as far as payment. It does not work the same way as a USHL based. So your USHL, USA Hockey, Tier 1 is USHL, Tier 2 is the NAHL, the NAHL, and Tier 3 is EHL and the NA3HL. Okay, so you got two Tier 3 leagues, and you got a Tier 1 and a Tier 2. All those play by the same rules as far as refunds and getting your money back, and how you can move from team to team. Not the same inside the NCDC and the USPHL. So if you go to an NCDC camp, I would imagine you're going to have to tell your elite team you're going. Read your contract, though. That contract's changed a few times over the years, and I'm not up to date on what the latest version of their contract is. But usually you can. Usually you can go to an NCDC because they're supposed to be on the same team. You can absolutely go to a NAHL tryout, though. The problem is if you make it. If you make it, then you've got a whole different set of circumstances as far as getting back any deposit or any money you've put into the USPHL roster. So let's see what else we've got here. Do NAHL scouts go to USHL combines or vice versa? Yes. But remember, we don't go to all of them. I'll go to some USHL camps this year. But what I also do is I get on the phone and talk to the USHL people that I know. And, if there's video, I'll get video. And there's a lot of advisors that have 3 or 4 or 5 kids at a USHL camp that I know and I trust. I'll use those guys as a set of eyes for camps I can't get to too. So there's always a sharing of information going on between the USHL and the NAHL, at least at the bigger programs and the stronger programs. Okay, let's see. Is it beneficial to attend the Minnesota High Performance Development Camp or attend a USHL camp with an invite for a coach? They are at the same time. Okay, so Minnesota High School Development Camp or a High Performance Development Camp, once again, that's a USA Hockey event and it's a Minnesota Hockey event. You're going to get a lot more attention at those events if you're successful with college coaches. You're not going to get as much at a USHL camp because it's just one team. You're going to get more eyes on you and a more diverse set of eyes on you from the college level and from the USA Hockey level at the high performance camp, development camp. So, it's apples or oranges. If you're really close to making a USHL roster, or if you really think you have a shot, or you plan on going to juniors right away, going to a USHL camp is the way to go. Now in Minnesota, the propensity is to go into your final year, play through your senior year of high school. Most Minnesota kids play all their high school years out, then go to juniors. If that's your route, depending on where you're listening from, then maybe the high performance camp's a better fit for you because you plan on staying in the high school ranks for another season. So a little bit of, some things to answer there and some things to work through. But if it were me and I knew I was going to go back for a senior year or I'm a sophomore going into my junior year, I'd probably do the high performance development camp as a personal choice. Can you make a bad choice there? Well, it depends. It depends on what your goals are. If your goal is to be on a USHL roster, you got to be at a camp. If your goal is even for the next year and that team really likes you and they've been talking to you, you got to go to the camp. If your goal is to get exposed to a lot of college and higher level coaches across the board, then going to the high performance camp is the way to go. So I hope that helps a little bit. That's a tough question though. That's not one that's easy to answer. Good evening. Your opinion on playing on a top team in the EHLP or playing U18 for an 05 goalie? Tough call. 05, you're starting to get into the age where you're moving into the junior age. I don't have enough information on that, but I tend to believe that if I have a choice between playing Tier 3 or playing really good quality U18, I'm going to lean towards U18, and here's why. One, a junior team can have 3 to 4 goalies. Do you really want to be on a roster with 3 to 4 goalies? If you're the number 1, that's great. If you're the number 2 that's splitting time, that's great. If you're number 3 that's played 2 games in the last 20, it's not so great. And if you're number 4 that only practices, it's not so great. Well, it could be really good if that's what you knew you're going into for the year. U18, 2 goalies. U18 usually splits pretty much down the middle until the going gets rough. U18 plays in front of showcases, in front of high-level junior teams. and college coaches. So you're getting showcased still. If you're playing at the EHLP, although the talent could be enough that you're getting quality shots, you may have thwarted your opportunity to be showcased at a higher level. So no problem with the league itself. The EHL has built a nice structure, but as far as development to get you beyond that, it might be tougher if you're playing in the EHLP versus playing at U18. So hopefully that helps you. That was a good question. NCDC is a very good league, but like any other league, it does depend on the organization you're playing for. Absolutely. As a former owner in that league, I can tell you that there's a huge difference in team to team. You've heard me say it numerous times on here. You got a couple of teams in there that can play with any junior team in North America, any junior team. You can put the Boston Junior Bruins and the Hitmen pretty much every year up against anybody. The only difference that I tell everybody is the disparity between top and bottom is huge in that league. And the other part of it is too, is it's predominantly a Division III development league. And what do I mean by that? The Hitmen, all you got to do, if you don't believe me, just go on to College Hockey Inc., go into the recruiting section and look at the list of players that have committed at the D1 level and count how many Division I commitments that league, fresh commitments for this year, for the last 12 months, any 12 months, and you can see that league produces new commitments of about 10 or 12 for the year, 10 or 12 for the whole league. Now, the Hitmen may have 12 on their roster right now. They usually do, but they're kids that committed in prep. They're kids that committed in other, in their 16 program or their 18 program before they got there. So the talent on the couple top teams, maybe even sometimes 3 or 4 teams, is great. Just be careful if you think you're going Division I and you haven't committed yet, and you go into that league. You're now, how many teams they've got? I don't even know what their number is this year. They've just added a couple. Let's say there's 15 teams. That's 300 players. 350 players. And you're only going to, your ratio is 12 fresh commits to 350 players. The odds are not with you. Whereas, the same amount, just the teams in the East Division of the North American Hockey League will probably triple that number as far as fresh commits for this year. So just food for thought. Nothing wrong with that comment, though. If you do not go to a USHL main camp, you were invited to, should you reply in the email and thank them for the invite? Oh, absolutely. Great question. Great question. So you get invited to a camp and you decide not to go. Absolutely. And you might even want to turn this around. You could turn it around and try to spark a conversation to see what their interest is. If you're dealing with an assistant coach or one of their scouts or an assistant GM, whoever you're talking to, say, look, I can't make it. I've got prior commitments. Can we have a conversation and talk about what your needs are and to see if there's some other way that I can, show you my talents, or is there some other place you can see me play this spring or summer? Use it to spark some conversation. You might find that some teams actually have enough interest in you where they'll open the door in some other way. So absolutely. Even if this hockey world is too small, the hockey world is way too small. If you're not reaching out and keeping these relationships, you don't have to keep them alive, but you want to keep them positive and fresh. Even if you think the guy's the biggest jerk in the world that's coaching or GMing or owning the team, you still, here's the way I handle things a lot of times. First of all, there's probably people out there that say the same thing about me. It's just because you're in the business. You're going to always polarize people because you've had to cut people before. You've had to put them on fourth lines before. You've had to say no before, which doesn't always go over well with people. But if I'm in a group of people and we're talking about a coach or a team or a owner and somebody goes off on them and, oh, this guy's a so-and-so, he's an SOB, he's an MF, he's this or he's that. I usually go, hey, everybody's got an opinion with him. He's always been good to me. And I leave it at that, and I usually try to walk away from the conversation on a positive note. Nope, I've not had that experience. He's always been good to me. It shuts it down, but it gets out in the community on how you deal with people. As a parent, as a player, never polarize if you can help it. Never polarize if you can help it. You're going to have to at times. I get it. And there's been times with me too. But for the most part, try to not be a polarizing parent or player always try to keep everybody on the right side. And you can say politely, if you reply, hey, I can't make it, but try to turn it into something where it gets a conversation started. So I got an invite to a pre-draft camp, but can't make it. Any way to get to the main camp? You can't do it unless you ask. Absolutely ask. Say, hey, look, I can't make your pre-draft, but I am open for your main camp. And you might want to, if you get them on the phone or email or text, however you're dealing with it, give them a compelling argument on why that you need to be at the main camp. But yes, the door can open. Not always, but the door can open to somebody to go straight to main camp. Remember, it's also timing because you get closer to main camp and there's still 15 spots open, and you've got an owner that's going, those 15 spots have got to be filled. The coach has already got the guys he wants there. The coach is like, I'm already set. I've got some tough decisions to make here. I've got a lot of good players to look at. He's not looking to push to fill those last spots. So the assistant coach or the assistant general manager and the scouts are usually the ones that are scrambling to find those last few spots to fill in. So if your timing's right, absolutely. Don't tell anybody I told you that. That's probably not good that I shared that with you. All leagues have their issues no matter what. Make sure you have a proper connections and proper contacts. It helps tremendously. Also, a fat pocketbook helps as well in this sport. It becomes a rich man's game. I can agree with everything, and I understand it's an expensive sport, but, you got to have a fat pocket if you want to race cars. You got to have a fat pocket if you want to be a tennis player. You got to have a fat pocket if you want to be an elite athlete in just about, all the sports now. It doesn't matter now. Football, you got camps all year long. The great quarterbacks are all going to, these elite quarterback camps. You got people going down to the Nike camps, and you got the camps out of Disney now for all the different sports. It's this way across the board. So, I would say sports at the elite level is something you're going to spend money on across the board. So, hey, we all knew that though going in. There isn't anybody that gets up to the junior level coming out of 16 and 18s that doesn't already understand that it costs money to play this sport. So if you're getting up to this level and you haven't figured that out yet, I don't think anybody on here is shocked when they find out that it costs money to play the sport. Although, remember, USHL tuition free and billet free. North American Hockey League is tuition free. You pay for the billets. NCDC is tuition free. You pay for the billets, and I think they have a $500 surcharge at the beginning of the year that goes on that too. And there's still leagues. The BCHL is tuition free and billet free. The AJHL, tuition free, billet free. The rest of the CJHL, at varying degrees, has a cost involved in it. But the bang for your buck, I'm telling you right now, if you don't explore your options in the CJHL, especially as an American, you're not doing your homework, because the AJHL is the fourth biggest producer of Division I players. BCHL is right there with NAHL. As a ratio, they do better, but as an overall league, then the North American Hockey League blows them away. But team by team, because they're a smaller league, they do just as well, sometimes a little bit better than the NAHL, but they're right there. So it's USHL, NAHL, PCHL, AJHL. They're all up here. Everybody else is chasing them, but there's great quality hockey in the CCHL, the MJ, the SJ. You can get into some of these programs, and you're paying half of what you're paying for a United States Tier 3 program. There's no reason not to at least explore these options. And they're all recruited. There isn't an American that isn't on the radar of the USHL in the North American Hockey League that's playing in the CJHL. Now, I take that back. If you're playing in the Quebec, or if you're playing in the Maritime League way out on the East Coast, you're probably not getting that much attention. And if you're playing in the SIJHL, a league that normally isn't producing a lot of Division III, Division I college talent, you're probably not getting much attention in those leagues. But the rest of them, you're getting attention in it. So hopefully that helps. I have a 97 and an 04. Never did one pre-draft thing. Yeah, once again, it's flavor. Tomato. Some people like pre-drafts and use them to their advantage and use it as another weekend to get good ice. Other people don't. They go straight to a main camp. That's great. If a lot of kids can get invited straight to a main camp. I know even the years that my son, my nephew, players that I recruit, that are going to be main camp kids. They still go to pre-draft with their buddies. They still go to pre-draft because it's a weekend of competitive ice that you might not get in your area because everything is shutting down. So pre-drafts can be used for a lot of different reasons. In the Detroit market, pre-draft weekends, you'll see a ton of U18, U16 players from the Tier 1 elite leagues and the HPHL skating with no intention of playing for that team, but skating because they're getting ice time and they're hanging out with their buddies and they're 4 or 5 of them are on the same team and they're getting a chance to get some ice and going out and getting some lunch in between games. And they use it almost like the pre-draft or the Chowder Cup on the East Coast. So, okay, let's see what else we got here. Two goalies here and do it for a living. Goalies are a meat market in all the leagues. LOL. Only as good as your last game. My kid played over 115 games in the NAHL. Every day was a battle. Good statement. Fully agree with that. And dealing with the drops down from the other leagues, you think your kid is set, then boom, the USHL kid gets bumped, and your kid is gone from the NAHL team or any other league that's happening. That's true at any level, though. That's true in the pros. You get a situation where a team at the top drops down or picks up a goalie. You get dropped down to the AHL. Somebody on that AHL team is getting dropped down to the East Coast League. Somebody at the East Coast League is getting out of hockey, or they're heading to a lower league, or they're heading to Europe. Juniors, same thing's happening. So fully agree, fully understand the frustration. It's tough. Let's see what else I got here. I have a U18 AAA goalie who got the athletic gene, but not the tall gene. Is there a place for him? He is a player, but most coaches will take a 6'2" goalie who can't play. Well, listen, this is an age-old problem that started in the 90s. Honestly, it really started with our national development program. When our national development program first started getting going in the mid-90s, the national development team that's in Detroit and Plymouth now was in Ann Arbor at the time. Their first few classes, they tried to get everybody 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", and they found success. They found that they could get a goalie to work at a higher level that was just big, even though he might have been raw, and defensemen that were just big that weren't the greatest skaters. They improved drastically because of the amount of ice time they were getting. And they saw success in this. They saw success with taking these big bodies. And it's across the board in all sports. I mean, we've heard the story before. Pippen and Rodman in basketball. These guys, when they were below 6 foot, they weren't all-star players. Now, Jordan was before he had his growth spurt, but all three of those guys became superstars off a growth spurt. So tall is always looked upon as favorable at first, but doesn't mean it lasts. And what I mean by that is there's plenty of really good goalies that are still out there. It just seems that we always look at the big goalies first. I don't pretend to be a goalie expert. I don't pretend to be somebody that knows that position like I know the rest of the positions. But I can tell you this, good goalie coaches, good goalie evaluators don't put size as the first thing on their agenda. It may be on the agenda just like it is if you're a fullback in football or if you're a quarterback. I mean, look at the amount of 6'7" quarterbacks now in Division I and Pro, 6'6" quarterbacks. It used to be quarterbacks at 6 foot or 6'2" were great and they were big enough. Now you rarely see that 6 footer, that 6'2" guy, making it into the NFL. So it's a 6'2" goalie over a 5'7" at first blush. That might come with somebody that's not is honed in the craft of picking goalies. That might be the case, but a couple little elevator pads in the skates, pick up that half inch here, pick up that inch there, bigger shoulder pads, maybe a little taller helmet. Do whatever you can to help out a little bit. But I feel it. I know where you're coming from. I've seen a lot of good goalies, though, that are smaller goalies that have been successful. All right, got to wrap up here a little bit. I'll take 2 more questions, and I got to get out of here, folks. We've been going at it for over an hour now. Opinion on the Chowder Cup. How do you pick who to play with, and is it worth going? So I'm a big proponent of the Chowder Cup. I'm a big proponent of playing on these showcase teams. If you're 15, 16, 17 years old, I really believe in these showcase teams, especially since many of these showcase teams, it's a NAHL general manager that runs the team. It's a NAHL assistant coach that runs it. It's an associate head coach from a D3 college team. It's an advisor that's got great connections. You've got all these types of people, and then there's just the individual that runs a summer program, but he's connected to all these guys. And I've used this story before. The Chowder Cup. It used to be a dad. His son would come and go, Dad, I got 3 or 4 buddies. Will you coach us in the Chowder Cup? So Dad would put together a local all-star team from Rochester or from Buffalo or from Boston, wherever. They go and play in the Chowder Cup and have a good time. A lot of prep kids were there, and it was a summer event for a lot of these different groups. Then what happened over time was the professionals started coming in. Now, how do you find out which teams? Go to their website and click past winners and just look through the list of who's always on top. You're going to see the same 4 or 5 organizations that are always fighting for the top 4 year after year. Those are the organizations you want to play for. Now, some of them have 2 teams, 3 teams, 4 teams that are registered, and they're leveled and they're layered. So maybe their first 2 teams are split equally with the talent, and then the other ones there's a drop-off. Everybody's different on how they put their teams together, but there's some good providers of teams, and playing on the best team you can is good. But also remember, you're not going to get as many face-to-face interactions with college coaches. I didn't go this year. I know a lot of people that didn't go, but still got lots of feedback. One of our scouts was there coaching a team. I got feedback from him. I know a couple of the guys that run the teams. I got feedback from them. So we're always getting feedback from these. Yes, they're good events to go to, and not only are they good events, but I would absolutely do my homework by going to the websites and looking at the websites to get your information. Let's see what else we got. Well, folks, I gotta call it right there. I know there's half a dozen questions that are still coming up, but I'm gonna call it right now because if I get into some of these other topics, I'm gonna go way over. And I've been working at this all day long. Hey, look, if you haven't gone to YouTube, please go and like and subscribe to YouTube. That'd be a huge help for me. We just passed the 500. I've been struggling to build that audience. Facebook's been growing good. All the different Facebook platforms are just, it's because the demographics fit better for us. We're right in the middle. We're right in the heartbeat of who uses Facebook. But YouTube, we just cracked 500. We got to get up to 1,000. So if you can like and subscribe to us there, sure would appreciate it. If you're not part of our discussion group, jump on Facebook and get in the discussion group, Junior Hockey Advisor discussion group. Take advantage of the webinar I just put out. Remember, it is on our Facebook page, Junior Hockey Advisor page, not our discussion group. Discussion group, there's no solicitation. If there is, it's not supposed to be in there. I'll try to catch it if somebody does solicit. But on our page, you can get in there. You can go in there for $9.99. All about the Family Advisor, who, what, when, where, and the questions you should be asking, what you should be looking for, and how to go about building that relationship with a Family Advisor. I hope that helps everybody. Have a great night, and we will see you next week. Have a great week.